You ever notice how your eBay store can be dead all day and then out of nowhere, 3 sales hit all at once? Like a little burst of excitement out of nowhere? It's like eBay suddenly remembered you exist. I call it the spotlight effect. The truth is, eBay doesn't show your listings to buyers at random. Even if someone searches for exactly what you're selling, your listing might not appear because eBay controls when you get visibility. They control which listings show up and when, and ultimately how often you make sales. And this can end up feeling like a spotlight of buyer attention focusing briefly on your store before moving on. And if you don't understand how this system works, it's going to feel like you have no control, because honestly, you don't. But that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do about it. Once you see what's really going on, you can start to work with it. You can position your store in a way that makes eBay more likely to shine that spotlight on you more frequently and for longer. That's what we're going to talk about today. Hello and welcome back to my weekly show where I talk about the ups and downs and in-betweens of selling on eBay. Got a lot of stuff to dig into here. I did go to some garage sales over the weekend. We're going to cover the stuff I found there. I'm going to talk through my numbers for the week. But first, let's jump right back into this spotlight effect discussion here. Before we talk about algorithms or visibility, I want to get one thing straight. None of it matters if your inventory sucks. eBay isn't going to push what buyers don't want. Almost every seller who reaches out to me with visibility problems is really facing an inventory problem. They're trying to sell low demand items or pricing themselves out of the market, or often they're doing both. So let's set the foundation here. Before you worry about timing or store activity or any of the tricks I'm about to show you, make sure you're selling things that buyers are already looking for. If the demand isn't there, no amount of algorithm hacking is going to save you. Now, if this spotlight theory of mine is real, then it leads to a pretty uncomfortable truth. eBay might be restricting how much you sell. To be clear though, I'm not talking about deliberately throttling. It's way more complicated than that, and I'll explain why in a minute. But even so, this idea that eBay controls how much you sell is still pretty hard to accept, because on paper it makes no sense, right? Like, eBay makes money when we make money. Why would they ever prevent anyone from making a sale by deprioritizing certain listings or hiding them entirely? Because eBay's goal isn't just to maximize your sales. Their goal is to manage the entire marketplace. And sometimes that could mean limiting a listing's exposure, even if it means you don't make the sale, because the system is optimized for something else that eBay values more. And what might they value more? I've got a few theories. The first is seller retention. If new sellers don't get sales, they just leave. eBay knows this. A beginner might list 5 things, get nothing for weeks, and then just quit. And that's bad for business. eBay needs seller growth to fuel inventory and search depth and ad revenue. So how do you keep new sellers around? Well, you give them hope. You give them sales. Not by forcing bad listings to win, but by allocating visibility in a way that gives every seller a shot, even if it means stronger listings like yours occasionally take a back seat. And this is not just about new sellers. This kind of balancing act might be how eBay prevents the whole marketplace from becoming a winner-take-all system, one that benefits only elite sellers with massive inventories and proven history. So eBay stands to gain more by ensuring that sellers compete on a relatively level playing field, and that could mean that they do what they can to spread the love around, algorithmically speaking. The second theory is way more simple: money. Promoted listings are a big revenue stream for eBay, and the spotlight effect plays right into it. By making organic exposure feel inconsistent, eBay creates incentive for sellers to pay for more. It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, would you still pay to promote if you were getting consistent sales? Probably not. But I promote all of my listings, and here's the thing: promoting doesn't seem to bring that spotlight to me more often. I still get inconsistent sales that seem to come in bursts even though I promote my whole store. What it does seem to do, though, is make it hit harder when the spotlight does swing my way. When you promote, it feels like you're likely to sell more during a burst than you otherwise would have, but the bursts and droughts still happen. That's why ads feel like they help, but never solve the bigger problem of inconsistent sales. They just sort of amplify the spotlight. They don't control it. So what does control it? But wait. Before we go there, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Justin, how do we even know eBay's controlling when and where our listings show up? How do we know the spotlight is real? How do we know that sales actually do come in bursts? It sounds like you're making all this up, or that your feeble human mind is creating patterns where none exist, or you're suffering from confirmation bias. And that's fair. These are all good questions to ask, and I'm glad I'm hypothetically asking them on your behalf, so let me answer them right now. First, if you poke around the eBay user agreement, you'll see that eBay themselves tell you this in so many words. They say things like, to drive a positive user experience, a listing may not appear in some search and browse results regardless of the sort order chosen by the buyer. And the appearance or placement of listings in search and browse results will depend on a variety of factors, which sounds exactly like eBay controlling if and when and where your listings will show up. And second, I have the data to prove all this. Fortunately, Flipwise tracks every sale down to the minute, so I pulled 2 full years of data, August 2023 through August 2025, and looked for patterns to test the idea that sales come in bursts. Here's how I set that up. I defined a burst as a short streak of 2 or more sales that happen close together, back to back, with no long gaps in between. If too much time passes without another sale, the streak ends. Once another sale happens, that's the start of a new potential burst window. I excluded sales made from the same buyer around the same time so they don't skew the data. Then I tested 2 burst window sizes, 30 minutes and 60 minutes, to see how frequently I got multiple sales within those 2 windows of time. And next, I needed a baseline. How often would bursts happen naturally if no spotlight existed and the sales were truly random? That's where the Poisson process comes in. It's a standard statistical model for random events over time, named after a French mathematician, Simeon Denis Poisson, from the early 1800s. He looked like someone who ironed his socks and assigned each pair a confidence score. This model assumes that events happen independently at a steady average pace with no memory of the past. Think of rain hitting your windshield. The drops aren't evenly spaced in time, but they do follow a predictable yet still random rhythm. So if eBay sales work like that and your sales were truly random, we could predict how many bursts would still happen naturally without the spotlight effect in place. And we could compare that random baseline with how many bursts actually happened over the last 2 years according to my data. So that's what I did. And what did the data actually say? Well, in the 30-minute test, I found 262 bursts over 2 years in my store. If sales were truly random, I should have seen around 179. That's a 46% increase, way more bursts than chance would explain. Then I widened the window to 60 minutes just for fun. That test showed 416 bursts over the last 2 years. The random Poisson model predicted only 320 for that time frame, which is still 30% less than reality. Now you can argue about where the cutoff should be, with 2 sales or 3 sales or 30 minutes or 60 minutes, but no matter how I adjusted the parameters, the same pattern came through. Sales clustered far more than randomness could explain. Also, some of that bursting can be explained by patterns we already know, like people shopping more in the evenings or on weekends or when they aren't asleep. So I adjusted for that too by comparing the bursts against a more realistic baseline that accounts for those daily and weekly cycles. And it's impossible to be perfect here. Time zones in a worldwide marketplace alone make it super challenging, but even then, the burst frequency was still well beyond random across both time windows with a more conservative baseline in place. But the spotlight isn't everything, of course. Not all of our sales come in bursts. The data is clear about that too. What you're selling still plays the biggest role in how often you make a sale, and sometimes eBay just can't control that, and nor would they want to. What I mean is, if you list a high demand item with low competition at a competitive price, it's unlikely you need to wait for the spotlight to find you to get it sold. The search demand alone is enough to make the sale happen quickly, and it does. And if that kind of inventory makes up the bulk of what you sell, well, you're lucky, and you may have never experienced the spotlight effect at all. But I will admit I'm not a data scientist, and this was not a rigorous, peer-reviewed scientific study. But based on the data, the spotlight theory seems to hold true. Sales don't appear to fall like raindrops. They sort of bunch up. And they do it more often than randomness can account for, even when seasonality and daily and weekly buying cycles are accounted for. When your store is silent for hours, then suddenly lights up, I just don't think that's a coincidence. That's the spotlight, and it's real enough to show up in the data. Now, I don't think any of this is deliberate, by the way. I don't believe that eBay set out to design a system where your sales come in bursts. It's just a natural consequence of the algorithm that they've built, something that's complex enough to manage billions of listings and hundreds of of millions of buyer interactions all at once. eBay's been running this system for a really long time. They've seen the patterns. They understand the trade-offs. They know that certain seller behaviors and buyer habits and listing strategies will lead to results that can sometimes feel unfair. So while they may not control every micro outcome, the broad mechanics of their search machine, they know exactly what it's doing, and it's by design. At this point, it's not that the machine is unpredictable. It's more that it's optimized for something sellers often forget: marketplace equilibrium, not individual seller performance. So when you hear people say eBay doesn't care about sellers, I sort of agree. eBay doesn't care about you as a seller in isolation. It's nothing personal though. You're just a participant in a system designed to balance supply and demand and conversions at scale. So no, I don't think eBay is throttling your sales. I think you're seeing the intentional outcome of an ever-evolving system doing what it was designed to do: prioritize sales across the entire platform, not just your store. Which brings us to the real question: what do we do with all this information? If this is the system we're working inside of, how do we as sellers take advantage of it, or at the very least, learn how to navigate it better? If eBay controls what gets seen and when, then your leverage comes from understanding what the system rewards. And the core of that system is something called best match, eBay's default sort order for search results. It's how eBay decides which listings to show first when a buyer types something in the search box. And while eBay doesn't explain everything, they do tell us some of what matters. These are the official best match factors straight from eBay. The first is relevance to the buyer's search. This one's pretty obvious. Your listing needs to match what the buyers are actually typing in the search box. So for you, that means using clear titles and good keywords and correct categories and detailed item specifics. If eBay's algorithm isn't sure your listing fits the search, it's less likely to show it, and the data you give the listing is the only thing it has to go on, so get that stuff right. The second is listing quality, things like good photos and detailed descriptions and clean formatting. Bad photos and cluttered descriptions and outdated formatting all send the wrong signals, so keep everything tight and clean. Number 3 is pricing. One of the fastest ways to kill your momentum as a seller is by pricing too high. It's one of the most common mistakes I see, and it regularly leads to slow and inconsistent sales. Most sellers price based on what they want to make or what they paid for the item instead of what the market is actually willing to pay. But buyers don't care about how much you paid. They're comparing your item to others based on one thing: the total cost to them. That includes the item's price plus shipping. And that's where a lot of sellers get tripped up. They use calculated shipping thinking, this way I don't lose money if it goes far, which makes total sense. But what ends up happening is your item looks more expensive than it is to a huge portion of buyers across the country. So if you're on, say, the East Coast and someone from California sees your $20 item with $25 in shipping, they're going to pass because another seller is offering free shipping or flat rate shipping and it looks a lot cheaper, even if the total difference ends up only being a few bucks. And you don't have to offer free or flat shipping, but they can make your pricing more attractive to more buyers if you can make the numbers work. The fourth are things like handling time and your return policy. And the best way to think about it is fast and low-risk listings get preferred treatment. And look, you don't have to offer same-day handling and free shipping and free 60-day returns. I don't, but you need to understand that the more liberal your handling and shipping and return policies are, the stronger the algorithm is going to favor your listings. eBay makes this crystal clear, so you want to be as buyer-friendly as you possibly can. The fifth one here is seller performance. Who you are as a seller and what you do on the platform matters. Cancellations, shipping issues, poor feedback scores, they all drag your visibility down. This is why eBay scores every seller with a seller rating. Keep yours as high as possible at all times, and if you drop below standard, expect your listings are going to lose visibility as a result, which will negatively impact your sales. But that said, don't sweat this one all that much. A few negatives here and there are not going to ruin your business. Just be a good human, be a good seller, aim for top rated and stay there, do the right thing, and you'll be fine. And finally, promoted listings. This is an easy one. You pay to give your listings more visibility. This is not a guarantee of sales, of course, but they do move you higher up in search, and it works. If your goal is to sell as much as possible, I will continue to recommend promoting your listings at a low percentage, unless eBay adopts the dreadful changes to the attribution model they're currently testing in non-US markets. Don't do it, eBay. But be careful here. Promoting your listings doesn't create demand when none exists in the first place. And if you're selling something without much competition, there's no reason to pay to get it to the top of search results because it'll be there already. And I need to address this because someone always says in the comments, who cares about best match? Buyers just change the sort order to the lowest price listings first. But no, most don't. eBay sets best match as the default for a reason. It's built to show buyers what they're most likely to click on and actually buy. And the vast majority of buyers never change it. Of course, some do, but if eBay thought sorting by lowest price first generated more sales, they'd make that the default instead. Anyway, that's everything that eBay admits about how their algorithm works. But if you've sold on the platform for any amount of time, you've probably seen patterns that don't show up in the official help documentation. Here are a few other factors to consider. Number one, recency seems to matter. Listings that are newly posted tend to get a burst of visibility. It's like eBay gives them a quick test to see if they'll convert. This is why I'm such a big proponent of ending and relisting or selling similar. They both do the same thing. They give you a quick way to give older, stale listings new life by giving them a new eBay item ID so that they show up as new in search. Interestingly, eBay recently confirmed that recency does play a role in search visibility at eBay Open 2025, but it still hasn't made its way into any documentation yet, and my guess it never will. Number two, listing activity also seems to play a role. Sellers who list regularly seem to stay more visible, and whether that's correlation or causation, it aligns with eBay wanting active and engaged sellers. Plus, the more you have listed, the more you're going to sell, which is just math. So it's a good habit to build, even if it doesn't have an impact on the algorithm. And three, conversion rate also carries weight. So if you have multi-quantity listings that consistently sell, that behavior seems to help keep those listings front and center with buyers. That's because they're proven to convert. You almost never want to end and relist or sell similar a multi-quantity listing that has sales history because you lose that conversion rate data that eBay likes so much. There are a few other factors that get talked about making a difference, but I don't think they do. A lot of sellers say that listings that you get messages on or offers on mysteriously seem to get a boost in search as well. We all experience this, but I think it's more that these listings are already appearing high in search for moments in time, maybe due to the spotlight effect, which is the reason why they're getting more activity like comments and offers on them in the first place instead of the reverse. Also, arbitrarily listing doesn't equal sales. If you flood eBay with low demand or underperforming inventory, it just doesn't guarantee visibility or sales for your store at large. eBay's measuring outcomes, not just effort. So while listing activity does feel like it plays a role to some degree, you can't just list garbage to please the algorithm and get other stuff in your store to sell. eBay's smarter than that. So just remember, you don't control the spotlight. eBay does. You don't get to decide when it hits, but when it does, you're still responsible for what it sees. That means your listings need to be ready. You don't need to game the algorithm or chase trends. You just need to be a seller worth showing. That means fast shipping, clear photos, accurate categories, competitive pricing, tight handling times, clean titles, and full item specifics. It means showing up regularly and doing the work even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. And most importantly, it means selling good inventory. But look, none of that is required. You're still going to make a few sales if you don't do this stuff. But if you want the algorithm to trust you, if you want buyers to trust you, you've got to earn that trust over time. Because sellers who keep showing up with quality and consistency and care, that spotlight finds them more often than those who don't. Whew. So, what next? Let's see. So I did go to some garage sales this past weekend, and let's take a look at what I found. Yeah, this is it. You're looking at it. I got nothing. No, didn't bring anything home at all. That's just the way it goes sometimes. You know, you're going to hit up some garage sales and you're just not going to find anything. And some days are like that. It's just going to happen, and they definitely still happen to me. Last week was really good. I found, almost 30 items for $100, and I'm going to make a lot of money on it. And today I went out to a few and just couldn't find anything at all, and it's all right. It happens. So nothing from garage sales today. All right, let's jump into my sales for the week. Looks like over the last 7 days, I had a gross sale amount of $2,952 and a net sale of $1,324. So again, a very good week for me. I do this part-time. My goal is around $600 net per week. And so I doubled that this week, more than doubled it. So another very good week. I've just been, again, a lot of the sales that I'm getting are on this consignment deal that I have, which is not typical for me. I don't typically sell on consignment consignment, only when the inventory is really special and really expensive. And the inventory I've got from this consignment deal is very, very expensive. But that net sale does reflect the consignment. It is reflecting the payouts that I make on everything that sells on consignment. So that is my true net. That's how much I'm actually taking home here. But yeah, just a really good week. Look at that. I had one day where I sold gross over $1,000. And again, my net is a little bit lower on these. My net profit margin is a little bit lower than normal because of this consignment deal. Typically, my net profit margin is around 55 to 60%, but because I'm splitting the net return with the person I'm consigning with, my net profit margin is a little bit lower than normal, but my gross sale and net sale is higher than normal, so it all works out in the end. My average gross per sale, $95. I'm selling some expensive stuff, which you're going to see in the top 10 here in a second, and my average net per sale was $41.37. That is still high. My normal average net is about $20. So again, when you're thinking about whether you take on consignment deals, you want to be thinking about how much net you're taking home after all of those deals. And so for me, I'm doubling my net. My normal average net is about $20. And so this week it's about double. And so that's something you just want to think about when you're taking on consignment deals. Or, at the end of the day, are you going to be making more money than you could be making by going and sourcing and listing and selling your own stuff that you find out, in the wild, versus selling someone else's stuff and having to give up a percentage of the net like I am here. But in my case, this is definitely working out just because it's really high dollar stuff, which you'll see in a second. Scrolling on down here, spend nothing on new inventory. You saw that, a big goose egg on garage sales this past weekend. My cost of goods that sold were $80.38. A lot of the cost of goods that sold were zero because of the consignment deal. When I sell on consignment, I put the cost of goods as zero so that I get a clean net return that can then be split. So my cost of goods, it doesn't, that only reflects stuff that I sold from my own inventory. Marketplace fees were $334 and shipping label costs were $281. Only 22 new listings this week. And I've just been sick. I cannot get over this sickness. I'm like feeling okay today, but literally 2 weeks now that I've just felt under the weather. And so I just did not get a whole lot of lists. You can see a lot of inconsistency where I'm listing 8, then listing none, 8 again, then I have a couple days off because I'm not feeling well. But I did get 31 sales, so that's okay. Average time to sell was 4 months, and my return on investment was 647%, which is right around average for me. And the stuff that's selling on consignment does not contribute to ROI here because, again, when I have $0 cost of goods, you cannot calculate an ROI when your investment is zero. So those are just not calculated at all as a part of the ROI. Let's go ahead and take a look at the top 10 sales. These aren't like top 10 most expensive sales or anything like that. They're just the interesting sales from the week that I want to talk about. Starting with number 10, this is an awesome one. This is definitely going to date me. This is Leisure Suit Larry 3 on MS-DOS from 1991, the 8-disc set. Gosh, this brings back so many memories. I loved Sierra games growing up, and Leisure Suit Larry was one that was, it definitely wasn't a Space Quest or it wasn't a King's Quest. It was a little bit more risque than that, but it was still a lot of fun. And for me, being like, probably 13 or 14 years old, I really loved playing Leisure Suit Larry. It's just a really fun game, a funny game. That's the best thing about these old Sierra games. They just had great storytelling, and I don't know, it brings back a whole lot of memories. This was a really fun one. I got it at an estate sale a long time ago, 2 years ago. This was one, I didn't buy it because I knew it was going to make me a lot of money. I bought it because it was fun to have. I paid $5 for it, and my net return was only $5.20, so 104% ROI. Didn't make a ton of money on it, but again, brought back a lot of fun memories for this Leisure Suit Larry 3 on MS-DOS. Coming in at number 9, this is a Disney Winnie the Pooh diaper bag. You guys saw this. I picked it up at a garage sale, only $1, about 10 days ago. I listed it. It took 1 day to sell. This is just like, in my mind, like a bread and butter item here. I figure why not? Like my net return's only about $11 on it, but when you're walking around a garage sale, this thing was there for $1. I just know it's going to sell quickly, and I know I'm going to make a little bit of money on it. It's going to be super easy to list and super easy to ship. Now, if this thing was dirty, I wouldn't have bought it, but it was just, I don't know. I just don't mind these low net return sales that happen very quickly. So a lot of people ask me like, hey, what's the minimum I should sell something for? It's just not the way I think about it. There's so many factors that go into it. I just don't mind buying something to resell that takes a couple of minutes to list, is going to sell within a day, is going to make me $11. It's going to be simple to ship. I pop it in a poly bag. My total time investment is like 5 to 10 minutes maximum. And yeah, I make $11, but who cares? Like, it's just when you have this machine built up where you just sort of feed inventory into it, it's easy to list, it's easy to ship. Like, why not feed stuff in like this in there? But you may be different. You may have a different threshold for how much you want to make on an item. For me, I just don't mind at all. All right, coming in at number 8, these Monster High dolls. You all saw this last week. I had this crazy garage sale where I just bought a ton of stuff for $100. And these were, I knew some Monster High dolls can be really good. I know nothing about them. I just saw these, they were new in package. I was like, yeah, I'll give them a shot. I was just building a big pile and putting the stuff on top. And this was just more stuff I was putting on top. Had no idea what they were worth. I gave them a purchase price of $7, but they sold for $39.99 in just one day. And so each of these comped out at about $20, including shipping. So I just grouped them together and did free shipping at $40. My net return on it was $17.06. You might be wondering how I give like a purchase price on all this. Well, what I do basically is I know I spent $100 on the lot. I knew that there was about 29 items, and that was about $3.45 per item. And so I gave this, a $7 purchase price because I had 2 items from there. And it wasn't perfect, but at the end of the day, I just make sure it adds up to the total amount spent. And you saw it in last week's video, all that stuff that I listed added up to $100. So it really doesn't matter how you break it down on a per item basis. I could have given one item, a $100 purchase price and then given everything else a $0 purchase price. It just doesn't matter. So it's really what's the word I'm looking for? Like how, granular you want to be. I like to know roughly like the net return on each item. So I give mine like a reasonable cut of the total cost. Coming in at number 7, this is a Hobo the Original. Is that the brand? I'm not even sure. My wife got this and listed it. I think it came from a thrift store over a year ago. We haven't been to thrift stores in a while. Typically, I don't go to thrift stores all that often during the spring, summer, and fall because those are garage sale seasons for me. And so typically right around September or October, we'll stop going to garage sales. I'll start going to more estate sales and more thrift stores. And I know I've been showing off my garage sale finds during my weekly videos. Do y'all want me to show off like my thrift store and estate sale finds as well? It makes sense. I'll probably do that, but let me know in the comments below what you think. But this purse, I would have never known to pick it up. My wife just has an eye for this type of thing. Looks like we paid $5.50 for it at a Savers, and it sold for $39.98. That's $29.99 plus $9.99 in shipping. The net return was $20.07. The actual cost to ship was only $7.49. So we made a little bit more money on the top for that one. But yeah, not a bad find for this leather purse here. Coming in at number 6, I love buying and selling stuff like this. Usually you find them at a garage sale. Usually they're less than $5. What did I pay for this one? Yeah, I paid $5 for this one. That's a typical price for something like this. I think it was a piece from the 90s, maybe early 2000s, but they just don't continue to make every model of coffee maker, forever. And they stop making these things, and people really want the items that they want. And so they might have a KitchenAid KCM 055 WH4 cup coffee maker that breaks, and they want to go find the exact same one. So they have nowhere to go other than eBay. This one sold for $49.98. That's $39.99 plus $9.99 in shipping. The net return was $28.64. The other good thing about this too is, sometimes you might buy them and they don't work, and that sucks. I would prefer that they work, but sometimes they don't, or sometimes they have a broken piece or something like that. But then you can just part it out. This happened to work, so it was completely fine to sell in whole. But if it wasn't, there were several different pieces. There was like a basket on the inside. You have the carafe. Sometimes there's a removable power cord that you can sell separately. So you could just end up, taking a risk on it, not knowing if it works or not. If it works, you sell it full price. If it doesn't, you sell the parts. And sometimes even selling by the part, you end up making more money than you would have if you sold it as a whole unit. But I just sold this one out as a whole unit because it was good to go. $28.64 was the net return on this KitchenAid. All right, coming in at number 5, this is an ambient weather pole mount. And so y'all may remember this a few months, I don't even remember, but I got a new weather station, my own personal weather station. The old one broke. And instead of just getting rid of the old one, I parted it out into as many pieces as I possibly could. And this is one of them. This was the pole mount that the weather station sat on top of. It sold for $59.98. I just went to the website where they sell these things new. And I think they were going for $70 or $80. And this, it was in perfectly fine condition. It had been outside, so it was a little dirty dirty. I had to clean it up a little bit, but it was still, if you're looking to buy one of these, you could either spend $80 on a brand new one, or you could spend, in this case, $60 on one that has been outside already for a while. It's a metal piece, and who cares? Who cares if it's not like it's damaged or anything? So it makes sense that somebody would try to find one of these on the secondary market for a little bit less money. But if you just look, like, I've made a lot of money parting this thing out, and it's part of why I like selling on eBay and sort of having a reselling mindset, is because it just lowers your investment in new things by parting out old things. And so this is a broken weather station here. You can see here, look, all net sales of $30, $17, $8, $20, almost $20, $40. And so I made, over $100 off this old system that I can then put towards the purchase of a new system, for example, which is exactly what I did. So I just think it's, it makes reselling feel like a sort of life skill, that it's keeping stuff out of the landfill, and it's also reducing your investment costs to future purchases as well. Coming in at number 4, this is a Disney Aladdin snow globe. This thing's actually bigger than it looks. And some of the pictures, I showed some measurements on there so people knew. I got this at a garage sale for $5. It sold for $84.98. It took 3 months to sell. This thing did get sold before, though. This was returned. And so you can see here, it got sold back in June, and they opened up a return. It was like bought by mistake or something, like whatever. I offer free, no questions asked returns. I did pay the return shipping of $12.82, but you'll see here that original sale, I charged $14.99 in shipping. The actual cost to ship was $12.82, and I didn't refund the original cost to ship because when it's a buyer's remorse situation, it wasn't like it was broken or my fault. You don't have to refund that original shipping cost. So I kept that original $14.99, which helped reduce the expenses that come along with supporting a return like this. And then I resold it for $84.98. And so my net return's a little bit lower than it would have if I didn't get that return. But I still made almost $50 net return on this with one return on it. So that's why I just don't sweat returns all that much. I would much rather not get returns, but when I do, if the item is still sellable, I just don't end up really losing a whole lot of money, and I still make a lot of money off this deal. So I still made $50 net return, even though the item got returned once. So that's why I try not to sweat returns. It still stings when you get them, but I try to let it go as quickly as possible, knowing that I'm going to be able to make that money back anyway. All right, coming in at number 3. Do you remember this from last week? This also came from that crazy garage sale where I bought $100 worth of stuff. This is a Lionel train set. This is the Bangor and a Roostuk. Maybe you can let me know if I'm saying that wrong. The GP9. This thing looked like it was new in the box, but it actually wasn't, and it was missing some of the styrofoam, but it was in really good condition. I did take a best offer on it, $89.99 plus $14.99 in shipping, so a total of $104.98, which put it within the range of what they were going for. That's why I took the best offer on it. Did cost almost $20 to ship. My net return on it was $64.17. So again, I paid $100 for 29 items at that garage sale, including this, and a net return of $64 on this. So over half of the investment came back with just one piece right there. I've already made my money back on this purchase. So also from that same garage sale, this Harry and the Hendersons plush vinyl. This thing was new in the packaging. This was from Harry and the Hendersons, the TV show, not the movie. So for those Harry and the Henderson connoisseurs out there, that's where this one came from the TV show, not the movie. $99, free shipping. The net return on this, $66. So there you go, two items. This Harry and the Hendersons and the train brought back $120 net return. So it more than paid for the rest of the stuff. So I'm already making money on that lot. 2 days this thing took to sell. I knew it was going to sell pretty quickly. It had a really good sell-through rate. There was only 5 or 6 listed, and the only ones that had sold were used. And so I priced mine a little bit higher than the used ones, and I probably honestly could have got a little bit more money out of this, but whatever. I'm happy with $66 for this Harry and the Hendersons doll. And coming in at number 1, this is a really cool piece. This came from the consignment deal that I'm doing. This is an Electro-Harmonix clap track, and so a lot of the stuff I'm selling on consignment, you can see this across my store, is vintage music equipment and just components and electronic music devices like this. This thing, believe it or not, like its sole purpose was to make the sound of clapping. And that has like a pad right there. And so you plug it in and you can change, you can make different sounding claps and you can add filters to it. But at the end of the day, you're like you're hitting your hand on this pad and to make a clapping sound. It's just so, I don't know, it's so funny. This thing's from the 80s, that these devices, used to exist for, very specific devices would exist for very specific reasons. Whereas now, you can just have a computer, in front of you. They can generate any sound you want in any way. I don't know. It's just kind of funny to have these like the purpose-built pieces of machinery here. And this is no doubt going to some sort of collector. They might use it. Somebody who really wants to make music in an analog way. Actually, it's probably not analog, but this is definitely going to some sort of collector. This is a collector's item. Maybe they'll use it for music production. I don't really know. But anyway, it sold for $309, if you can believe that. $309.98 was the total. My net return was $138.55. That's because I split the consignment right there, 50-50. So the person I'm consigning with got $138.55. I got $138.55 on this really cool piece, this clap tracks piece. Yeah, this is really fun. Really fun. There's lots of stuff like this in my store. It's been a lot of fun to sell this type of thing. So, all right, lights out. What do y'all think about this eBay algorithm business? I usually stay away from sort of creating hypotheses about how the eBay algorithm works, but I just, I'm fortunate to have access to a lot of good data on my store. And I just knew that I'd experienced this sort of spotlight effect. And I just thought, you know what, is this real or not? I want to figure out if this is real or not. And, it just was really surprising. The data was pretty clear that these sort of sales were coming in bursts like that. And so it was just really, really fun to see. And I tried to, it's really hard though, to put all that information together into a video. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions and nitpicks about how I presented that information and that data. It's just I had to cut so much. The video would have been extremely boring had I gone into every little detail and shared every little detail about all that. So I tried to make it, both informative and data-driven, but also interesting. I don't want to bore everyone. In fact, I'm afraid that this video is probably a little bit more boring than my other ones already. And that's with cutting a bunch of the boring stuff. So hopefully it's interesting. I hope you found it useful. I certainly had fun putting it together. But yeah, that's, I hope I start feeling better soon. Because I'm really just sick of waking up feeling sick. But I'm feeling better. So I think I'm on the other end of it. And yeah, that's all I got today. So we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for watching.